The Silver Pecan was the kind of restaurant where wealthy men sealed billion-dollar deals over oysters, and waiters moved like shadows, silent, polished, invisible. Soft jazz curled around crystal chandeliers, glasses chimed like polite applause, and every table glowed under gold-rimmed lamps. It was elegance wrapped in whispers. And then a voice sliced through it all like a blade. "Are we allowed to be happy? You people should stick to cleaning tables, not touching dying kids." The room froze. A fork clattered onto a plate. A violinist missed a note. Even the air seemed to stop breathing. Every head turned toward the scene unfolding near the center aisle. Serena Miles, 27, black, beautiful, and composed in a beige uniform that dimmed her brightness, stood rigid. A tray of lemonades trembled slightly in her grip, but her face stayed still, dignified, unflinching. Her brown eyes did not shrink, did not widen, did not burn back. She just held her ground. The man who had spat the slur sat smugly at the bar, swirling bourbon like he owned the place. But he wasn't the one who mattered. The man who mattered sat at table 19. Ambrose Creed, billionaire founder of Creed Cybertech, America's golden empire of AI and defense technology. His tailored suit was worth more than most people's cars, but it was the look in his eyes that made him powerful. Cold. Calculating. Untouchable. Except tonight, something cracked. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled around the edge of his glass. Slowly, dangerously, he lifted his gaze from his daughters to the man who dared speak. But before he could respond, Serena gently set down the drinks on the table. Her hands were steady again, her voice soft but filled with something the entire restaurant lacked, humanity. "I've seen that look before," Serena said, kneeling slightly to meet the girl's dull, fading eyes. "My brother had the same eyes, before he went away." Ambrose inhaled sharply. Because no one, talked about death in front of his children. Not the nurses, not the specialists, not the reporters, not even him. But Serena had spoken the truth softly, like a lullaby instead of a knife. Across from her sat the Creed sisters. Aria, freckles faded like old paint. Mira, curls limp, eyes tired. June, the smallest, with a breathing tube taped gently along her cheek. The room knew the rumor. They had 6 days left to live. Some guests stared with pity. Others with curiosity. Some pretended to look away but still whispered greedily behind napkins. But Serena didn't whisper. She didn't hover. She didn't flinch. She saw them. Truly saw them. The restaurant manager, a small man with a big ego, rushed over, sweating through his collar. "Serena. What are you doing? Apologize to Mr. Creed at once." Serena rose slowly, placing the empty tray against her hip. "No child," she said softly but clearly, "should be treated like a ghost before they're gone." A silence followed, thick, electric, breathtaking. Ambrose stared at her, but not the way others did. Not with suspicion, or dismissal, or fear of impropriety. With something he hadn't felt in years. Curiosity. Understanding. Recognition. Even the girls reacted. Aria's fingers curled around the edge of her placemat. Myra's eyes followed Serena with fragile wonder. June's breathing eased, just slightly, as if the presence of someone warm eased the cold around her lungs. Serena stepped back, giving them space, but something had already shifted. Something fate-sized. As she walked toward the kitchen, her heart pounding but her posture tall, she didn't see Ambrose watching her. Not like a billionaire, but like a father desperate for anything real. That was the moment everything began to change. Not because Serena meant to disrupt a world built of marble and money, but because truth had finally walked into a room built on silence, and refused to whisper. The next morning rose gray and heavy, a sky that looked like it hadn't made up its mind. Serena Miles stood before the towering iron gates of the Creed estate, clutching a worn duffel bag that held every piece of her life: 3 uniforms, a Bible, a photo of her brother Elijah, and the bracelet she made him before he died. Her breath clouded in the cold air. She wasn't supposed to be here. No one called her. No one invited her. And yet, some invisible pull had led her to this place of marble, power, and sorrow. Through the bars, the mansion rose like something carved out of silence. Endless windows. Stone pillars. A driveway long enough to forget where you started. Serena had seen hospitals with more warmth than this home. She almost turned around. Almost. But then the front door opened, and the butler stepped out, tall, polished, robotic. "We're not hiring," he said before she could speak. "Deliveries go to the back." Serena swallowed. "I'm not a delivery." He lifted an eyebrow, impatient. "Then I'm afraid you're in the wrong place." "No," Serena whispered. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Before the butler could respond, a voice echoed from the grand staircase inside. "Let her in." Ambrose Creed. The butler stiffened, then stepped aside. Serena entered a world that smelled of disinfectant, lavender candles trying, and failing, to mask the scent of fear. The foyer was massive, gleaming, cold. Portraits lined the walls, paintings of Creeds from generations past, all with the same sharp jaw and unreadable eyes. The mansion felt like a place where sound went to die. Where emotions were filed away like business contracts. Serena followed the butler down a long hallway lined with closed doors. Nurses moved like ghosts, quick steps, quiet expressions, eyes avoiding hers. They weren't cruel. They were defeated. Machines hummed behind half-open doors. The floor glimmered from constant cleaning, but the air felt heavy. Hopeless. Finally, they reached a wing with pastel wallpaper, soft colors trying desperately to undo years of grief. The butler hesitated before opening the door. "They're inside," he said. "And, this won't be easy." Serena stepped into a room shaped like heartbreak. 3 small hospital beds stood in a row. 3 small bodies lying too still. Aria, her freckles dim like stars before dawn. Mira, fingers curled around a stuffed lamb missing an ear. June, the smallest, chest rising in uneven tremors beneath tangled sheets. Machines beeped softly, measuring the distance between life and loss. A nurse scribbled on a chart without looking at Serena. When she finished, she slipped out wordlessly, leaving the room colder. Serena placed her duffel bag gently on the floor and approached the first bed. Her voice, soft as cotton, filled the stillness. "Hi," she whispered. "I'm Serena. I don't have a title or a degree, but I'm here if you'll have me." Aria blinked, slow, tired. Mira didn't move, but her eyes flickered. June whimpered in her sleep, a fragile sound that squeezed Serena's chest. So Serena did the only thing she could. She stayed. She pulled a chair close and told stories, southern folktales her grandmother once whispered during storms. She read gently, sang softly, hummed when words failed her. She didn't touch the machines. She didn't ask medical questions. She simply existed in the room, giving warmth where science could not. Hours passed like seconds. And when Ambrose Creed returned, exhausted from meetings, he found something he hadn't seen in weeks. All three girls, sleeping peacefully. Serena sat in the corner, June's tiny hand wrapped around her finger. Ambrose froze. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Serena didn't flinch. "Something no one else here has tried," she whispered. "Being present." By the next morning, Serena learned something crucial about the Creed estate. It wasn't just cold. It was defensive. The house itself seemed built to push people away. Voices echoed like they didn't want company, footsteps sounded too loud, and the silence in between was thick enough to choke on. Even sunlight struggled to seep through the tall windows, landing in weak patches on the marble floors. Serena slipped quietly into the kitchen to boil tea for the girls. She had barely stepped inside when the room fell unnaturally still. Three maids stiffened at the counter. The dishwasher paused mid-cycle. Even the chef froze with a knife hovering above a carrot. And then Serena heard the click. The click of heels sharp as disapproval. Ms. Evelyn Lennox, head housekeeper, appeared in the doorway like a judge entering a courtroom. She was immaculate, gray bun wound tightly, uniform crisp, posture straight enough to cut glass. She didn't bother hiding the disdain in her eyes. "You're still here," Lennox said, voice like ice sliding across metal. Serena kept her tone polite. "Good morning." "That wasn't my question." Serena turned back to the kettle. "The girls like warm tea in the morning. Helps with their breathing." Lennox's lips thinned. "You think a cup of tea is going to fix what world-class doctors couldn't?" "I'm not trying to fix anything," Serena replied calmly. "I'm trying to care." Lennox stepped closer, heels tapping like a ticking bomb. "You may have fooled Mr. Creed for a moment, but let's be very clear. This house isn't a charity. And it certainly isn't a place where—" She paused, eyes sharpening. "Where girls like you get to play hero." Serena stirred the tea, letting the insult settle without letting it wound. "I'm not here to be a hero," she said softly. "I'm here because three little girls deserve kindness, whether they survive this week or not." The maids exchanged uneasy glances, unsure which woman they feared more. Lennox leaned in, voice low and sharp. "This is a world of power, money, and pedigree. Sympathy doesn't belong here. And neither do you." Serena met her gaze. "You mean black women don't belong here?" The room went dead silent. Lennox blinked, but did not deny it. Serena's voice softened, but sharpened in truth. "I grew up in places where people like you made the rules. Where I was told to stay invisible. But love doesn't ask for permission. It walks into rooms it's not invited to, and stays." For a moment, even the boiling kettle hesitated. Lennox stepped back, rattled. But she wasn't done. Neither was the house. Later, as Serena carried the tea tray through the halls, she felt the eyes. The security guard who usually nodded refused to look at her. The chef muttered, "Saw it on the news, unfair expectations." The gardener glanced up from the hedges with suspicion rather than curiosity. She knew what it was. Fear. Fear of what she represented. Fear of change. Fear of someone who came without pedigree but carried purpose. Still, Serena held her head high and walked with quiet certainty through corridors built to shrink people like her. When she entered the girl's room, everything softened. Arya looked up first, a faint smile blooming. "You came back." Mira pushed herself up weakly. June reached out with trembling fingers. Serena set the tray down gently. "Told you I would." She sat cross-legged on the floor, her back against the wall, letting silence wrap around them. After a moment, she reached into her duffel bag and pulled out 3 homemade bracelets, pink, lavender, sky blue, thread slightly frayed, beads imperfect. "I made these a long time ago," Serena whispered. "For someone I lost. Now, I think they belong to you." She placed one on each thin wrist. The girls stared, quiet, fragile, hopeful. Serena smiled softly. "From one forgotten girl to 3 others. Let's not be forgotten anymore." The next day dawned with a strange, deceptive calm. Sunlight stretched itself across the Creed estate in thin, reluctant lines, creeping through curtains as if afraid to disturb the stillness. Serena arrived in the girl's room early, humming gently as she helped Mira sit up against her pillows. June clutched her bracelet like a charm. Arya watched with half-lidded eyes, a flicker of life returning to her cheeks. But peace has a way of announcing when it's about to end. The door swung open with a force that made the 4 poles tremble. In walked Dr. Malcolm Crowe, the man Serena had heard about but hadn't met, until now. He was tall, rigid, and cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. His white coat looked starched enough to stand on its own. A clipboard rested against his chest like a shield. Behind him, a nervous young nurse trailed, eyes lowered, footsteps light, as if she feared being noticed. Dr. Crowe didn't look at Serena. He looked through her. "Who gave you permission to move her?" he snapped the moment he saw Mira sitting upright. Serena rose slowly. She asked to sit. "I made sure she was stable." "No harm in that," she added gently. Crowe's lips curled. "No harm. You're not trained. You're not a nurse. You're barely qualified to stand in this room." Arya flinched. June shrank back. Mira gripped Serena's sleeve. Serena folded her hands in front of her. "I was with them when they woke up crying. You weren't. I was with them when they couldn't breathe. You weren't." Crowe stepped closer, voice sharp as a scalpel. "You think you understand their condition because you held their hands? They are fragile. One wrong move and they die." Serena shot back, her voice quiet but fierce. "And what have your right moves done? They still can't walk. They still can't eat without crying. They still whisper that they're scared." The nurse gasped softly. "But Dr. Crowe." He didn't blink. "You are projecting your savior complex," he said. "These girls are not here. So you can rewrite your own trauma." Serena inhaled sharply, but she didn't break. "I'm here because 3 little girls asked me not to leave. That's all." Crowe turned toward the door. "Mr. Creed will handle this. I have no interest in arguing with a waitress." He didn't see Ambrose Creed standing in the hallway. Ambrose stepped inside, expression unreadable, voice low. "Handle what?" Crowe straightened. "Mr. Creed, this woman is interfering with medical protocol. I recommend she be removed immediately." Serena didn't defend herself. Didn't plead. She simply looked at the girls. Arya's fingers clutched the bed rails. Myra's eyes shimmered. June's voice trembled like a broken whisper. Please don't make her leave. Ambrose's gaze flickered, first to his daughters, then to Serena, then to the doctor he had trusted for years. Crow folded his arms. This is a medical facility. Not a place for sentiment. Serena spoke softly, but her words hit the room like thunder. This isn't a facility. This is their home. And they're dying faster from fear than from illness. Ambrose inhaled, long and deep, as though the truth weighed more than the air around him. Then he exhaled a single sentence. She stays. Crow's jaw tightened, fury flickering behind professional restraint. But she stays, Ambrose repeated, firmer. And that's final. Serena lowered her gaze to the girls, brushing a curl from June's forehead. I'm right here, she whispered. For the first time, the house itself seemed to sigh, a sound like walls loosening under the pressure of truth. And Dr. Crow, defeated but not done, left the room with a storm brewing behind his eyes. Serena didn't smile. This wasn't victory. It was the beginning of a war she hadn't asked for. But would fight anyway. The storm came without warning. One moment the sky was merely gray, sulking above the Creed estate, the next, clouds rolled in like an army, swallowing the last of the daylight. Rain began as a whisper, then grew into a furious drumming against the glass. Thunder cracked so violently the chandeliers trembled. The mansion's lights flickered once, twice, before the backup generators groaned awake. Serena was reading to the girls when it began, a story Elijah used to beg for during storms. June curled against her hip with her bracelet pressed to her chest. Arya lay watching the lightning paint the walls. Myra's head rested on her pillow, breaths uneven but calm. Then everything changed. Mira jerked forward, clutching her stomach with a strangled cry. June's breathing sputtered into sharp, terrifying wheezes. Arya's eyes rolled slightly, her chest rising in shallow, panicked quivers. Serena froze for half a second, a half second that stretched into eternity, before instinct ripped through her. Girls, I'm here, she whispered, forcing calm into her voice. Just stay with me. She hit the emergency nurse button. Nothing. She hit it again. Still nothing. She ran into the hallway. Lights flickered. A nurse down the hall yelled, the storm knocked out our internal signal. Communications are down. Serena's blood turned to ice. The girls didn't have minutes. They had seconds. She sprinted back into the room, heart slamming against her ribs. Rain battered the windows like fists pleading for entrance. A gust of wind slipped through a crack, scattering paperwork across the floor. Mira gasped, her lungs struggling to catch even a thread of air. June whimpered, her little hand reaching blindly. Arya tried to sit up, only to collapse back with a choking sound. Serena moved. Cold compress for Mira. Honey on the tongue for June to stop her throat from closing. Adjusting Arya's oxygen tube with trembling fingers. Stay with me, Serena whispered, her voice cracking. Follow my voice. I'm right here. Look at me, baby. Look at me. But then. Arya stopped moving. Her chest went still. No, 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 Arya, Serena breathed, falling to her knees. Come on, sweetheart. Don't leave me. Don't you dare leave me. Her hands automatically positioned themselves over the tiny ribcage. She began CPR. 1, 2, 3, breathe. Thunder swallowed her counting. Come back to me, Arya," she cried, tears slipping onto the girl's nightgown. "Please, please, stay." Lightning flashed, illuminating her face streaked with rain and sweat. The power flickered again. Papers flew. The wind howled. Machines beeped in slow, dying rhythms. Serena screamed into the storm. "Help! Somebody help us!" Still, no one came. She pressed harder, faster, grief and desperation fused into strength. "You are not dying tonight," she sobbed. "I lost one sibling, I will not lose 3 more. I promised Elijah I wouldn't walk away. You hear me? I promised." The door burst open. Ambrose Creed, soaked, breathless, hair plastered to his forehead, stumbled inside. "What happened?" he shouted. Serena didn't look up. She stopped breathing. "Ambrose, help me." For once, he didn't hesitate. He knelt beside her, hands shaking but determined. Serena guided him through the motions, their breath sinking with the desperate rhythm. 1, 2, 3, breathe. Again. Again. Suddenly. A gasp. Arya's tiny chest rose, then fell, then rose again. Serena collapsed back, sobbing. Ambrose covered his face with shaking hands, overcome with relief and fear and gratitude all at once. The storm still roared outside, rattling the windows, shaking the floors. But inside that fragile room, something stronger than the storm had taken root. Not medicine. Not luck. Not science. A fight. A promise. A second chance resurrected between 2 people who refused to surrender 3 little girls to the dark. Outside, the world raged. Inside, hope breathed again. The storm passed some time before dawn, but its memory clung to the mansion like the smell of wet earth. Sunlight crept in slow ribbons through the windows, lighting the halls with a soft, unfamiliar glow. For the first time since Serena had stepped foot inside the estate, the morning didn't feel cold. It felt expectant. The house had changed overnight. Serena didn't realize it at first. She was too exhausted to notice anything beyond the rise and fall of the girls' breaths as she sat between their beds, still in the same damp clothes, her fingers gently brushing Arya's hand. The smallest movements reassured her, June's eyelashes fluttering, Mira shifting slightly, Arya's tiny hum as she dreamed. They were alive. Alive because she refused to give up. Alive because Ambrose Creed, a man used to solving problems with money, had knelt on the floor and fought beside a waitress he barely knew. When the girls finally fell into a deep, healing sleep, Serena slipped into the hallway. And she saw it. A young maid polishing the banister paused as Serena walked by, not to avoid her, but to smile. A real smile, soft and grateful. "Morning, Miss Serena," she whispered. Not the waitress. Not you people. Her name. Serena blinked, taken aback. "Good morning." In the kitchen, warm butter and cinnamon filled the air, nothing like the cold sterility from before. The chef, who had previously muttered insults under his breath, placed a plate of fresh croissants on the counter. "For the girls," he said without looking at her. "And, for you. Stormy night. You must be tired." Serena nodded, unsure if she was dreaming. The butler passed her in the hallway, offering a brief nod, formal, but respectful. A younger maid hurried by with blankets and whispered to her companion, "She saved them. All 3. The house was no longer breathing fear. It was breathing relief. She found Ambrose on the front porch, standing alone with his hands resting on the railing. The earth was soaked, the sky washed clean, and the magnolia trees dripped rain like tears the storm had forgotten to take. He didn't turn when she approached. He simply said, quietly, "They're stable." Serena nodded. "They're still fragile, but they're fighting." Ambrose exhaled, slow and shaky. "Last night, if you hadn't been there." "We both were there," Serena said gently. "We didn't save them alone. They chose to stay." Ambrose turned, studying her with an expression she had never seen on him, raw, unguarded, almost reverent. "You changed this house," he said. "No," Serena replied. "The girls did. I just reminded everyone how to see them." He leaned against the railing, staring out at the brightening horizon. For a moment, he looked younger. Softer. Human. "I spent months building walls around everything," he admitted. "Around myself. The staff. Even the girls. If I kept everything controlled, polished, perfect, maybe the world couldn't hurt us." Serena stepped beside him, arms crossed loosely. "Perfection can't protect anyone. But presence can." He looked down at his hands, hands that once held the world, now trembling from simply holding his daughters through the night. "Money can't hold a child's hand when they're scared," Serena whispered. Ambrose closed his eyes, letting the truth settle. When he opened them, he didn't look like the billionaire who had appeared on magazine covers or news segments. He looked like a father finally understanding what mattered. Behind them, laughter echoed faintly from upstairs, thin, tired, but real. The girls were waking. Serena smiled. "They're calling you." Ambrose blinked. "Me?" "Yes," Serena said softly. "It's time to go be their dad." He nodded, wiping the corner of his eye quickly, hoping she didn't notice. But Serena saw everything. And for the first time since tragedy entered their lives, the Creed mansion felt alive, not because the storm had passed, but because love had finally been allowed in. The night settled gently over the Creed estate, the kind of night that didn't threaten or brood but simply existed, soft, still, and full of unspoken things. The girls had finally drifted into steady sleep, their breaths more even than they had been in weeks. Serena tucked their blankets one last time before slipping out into the hallway. She expected silence. Instead, she found the house humming, not with machines, but with life. A maid laughed quietly in the kitchen. Someone played soft classical music from a distant room. The smell of chamomile and vanilla drifted through the halls. Serena paused, realizing how deeply the mansion had changed in only a few days. But there was one place still untouched by warmth. The garden. She found Ambrose there. He sat on a weathered stone bench under a canopy of wisteria, its blossoms hanging heavy like purple tears. A single lantern glowed at his feet, casting golden patterns across the paving stones. He looked smaller in the night, shoulders curved forward, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the sky rather than the empire he usually watched over. Serena walked closer, her footsteps soft. "You okay?" Ambrose didn't answer at first. He just breathed in the cool night air, then let it out slowly, like letting go of something heavy. "They keep asking me about their mother," he said finally. "And I keep pretending I have answers." Serena took a seat beside him, leaving just enough space to breathe. "You don't have to pretend with me." Ambrose's jaw tightened. "I've never told this to anyone. Not the press. Not the staff. Not even the girls." Serena waited. She was fire, he whispered. Her name was Nadia. She didn't walk into rooms, she disrupted them. She laughed loudly, danced in grocery store aisles, made up songs in the shower, and hated everything about my world. Serena listened quietly as fireflies drifted lazily through the garden. Ambrose continued, I met her when I was 25. I was already a rising name, already. Drowning in meetings and expectations. She was the only person who ever looked at me like I was a man, not a headline. What happened? Serena asked softly. We got married too fast. Had the girls too soon. Nadia wasn't built for a life of schedules and security teams and people who spoke in business languages instead of human ones. He cleared his throat. When she found out she was pregnant with triplets, she panicked. She said she refused to raise them in a house where silence echoed louder than love. Serena looked around the garden, imagining the mansion years ago, colder, emptier. One night, Ambrose said, voice breaking, she kissed the girls goodbye, walked out the door, and never came back. Serena inhaled sharply. She left you? Ambrose shook his head. No. She left this. The marble. The pressure. The expectations. I was the one she couldn't stay with, because I kept choosing the empire over the people inside it. He swallowed hard. I locked her room after she left. Couldn't bear to open it. It felt like if I sealed the door, I could seal the memory. Serena placed her hand gently over his. Grief isn't something you lock away. It's something you walk through. Ambrose's eyes glistened, catching the lantern light. You helped me walk, he whispered. You walked right into this house and lit it up. You changed everything. Serena shook her head. I didn't change your daughters. I didn't change your house. They were waiting to be loved. You just had to meet them halfway. Ambrose looked at her, truly looked. Do you think Nadia would approve of who I am now? Serena smiled softly. If she could see the father you're becoming? Yes. She'd be proud. For a long moment, neither spoke. They just sat there, two people bound by circumstance, loss, and the fragile miracle happening upstairs. In the garden's quiet, Ambrose finally said what he'd never said aloud. I'm scared to lose them. Serena squeezed his hand. Then don't lose them. Stay. Show up. Be here, every day. That's all love asks. A breeze swept through the flowers, carrying the scent of wisteria and new beginnings. For the first time in years, Ambrose Creed didn't feel alone. He felt human. Spring arrived quietly, as if it didn't want to interrupt the fragile peace blossoming in the Creed estate. It began with a breeze, soft, warm, carrying hints of jasmine and fresh earth. Then came the light, filling the mansion in places that had been dark for far too long. The change was subtle at first, but undeniable. Life had returned. The garden, once a place Ambrose avoided, now burst with color. Lavender swayed gently in the wind, tulips stretched toward the sun, and butterflies fluttered between blossoms like tiny miracles. And in the middle of it all were the girls, Aria, Mira, and June, laughing barefoot on the stone path. They were still thin, still fragile, still healing, but they were alive. Serena stood on the porch with a pitcher of lemonade in one hand and a book tucked under her arm. She didn't wear her beige waitress uniform anymore. Instead, she wore soft clothes, comfortable shoes, and the quiet confidence of someone who belonged. It had been months since the storm. Months since Dr. Crow had glared at her like she was a threat. Months since Lennox had tried to push her out of the house. Months since the girls had nearly slipped away in her arms. Now, everything was different. Ambrose Creed walked out of the kitchen with a plate of slightly burnt pancakes, his third attempt at breakfast that morning. He was covered in flour, syrup streaked across his shirt, and he looked nothing like the billionaire the world recognized. He looked like a father. "Dad," Arya called from the garden, "you're the worst cook ever." Ambrose laughed, wiping his hands on a towel. "You've eaten 3 already, so I can't be that bad." Serena smiled at the scene, the girls dancing in the sunlight, Ambrose joking without the weight of the world on his shoulders. She didn't know when the shift happened, only that it had. Ambrose approached the porch, leaning beside her. "The girls want a treehouse." Serena raised an eyebrow. "And are you going to build it?" Ambrose sighed. Dramatically. "I can barely make pancakes." "You'll learn," Serena said. "Second chances aren't complicated. They're just choices made over and over." Ambrose's eyes softened. "Do I deserve one?" Serena met his gaze. "You already took it. Every morning you wake up and choose them, choose to be present, you take your second chance." The girls' laughter drifted through the air like wind chimes. Serena stepped off the porch, placing the pitcher on a small table. She walked toward the garden with Ambrose close behind. June spotted them first, running forward with unsteady steps, her little arms wide open. "Serena. Daddy. Come play." Serena knelt, catching her in a hug. June's heartbeat fluttered against her chest, stronger than ever. Mira and Arya joined them, bracelets glimmering in the sun. Ambrose crouched beside them, his eyes glistening with emotion he didn't bother hiding. "You know," Serena said softly, brushing a curl from June's forehead, "there was a time this house felt like a museum. Cold. Echoing. Lifeless." Ambrose nodded. "I thought if I kept everything perfect, nothing bad could happen. And now." He looked at his daughters, their smiles brighter than any chandelier he owned. "Now I know perfection isn't life. This is." Serena smiled, rising to her feet. "Then don't let it go." He looked at her, really looked at her, with gratitude, with tenderness, with something he wasn't ready to say aloud yet. "Stay?" he asked quietly. Serena inhaled, heart-catching. "If you want me to." Ambrose reached for her hand, fingers trembling slightly. "I want you here. With them. With us." The garden shimmered with sunlight, warm, golden, full of new beginnings. Serena squeezed his hand back. "I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, surrounded by laughter, warmth, and the gentle breath of spring, the Creed mansion was no longer a place of sorrow. It was a home. A home reborn through love, courage, and the quiet bravery of a woman who refused to walk away. A season of second chances, finally embraced.